Okay, so an assault marine. So right now we're on the assault to hit chart. The assault to hit chart is different than the shooting to hit chart. So you're going by weapon skill right now, which is WS. And assault marine, the attacking weapon skill. Assault marines have weapon skill 4, and stormtroopers have weapon skill of 3. So the assault marines are only going to need a 3+ here, which is quite a few dice. So they failed 4 of them, so they got all these left. Now you use the same to wound chart. Assault marines have a strength of 4, and I only have a toughness of 3, so they need a 3+ to wound. Okay, so they failed 3 of those, but there's still 4 attacks left here. So 4 of them wounded me. Now I get to make my saves. Since there's only 3 guys in my squad, I'm going to say you have to allocate wounds. So how you allocate wounds is you basically put a wound on each guy, and then once all the guys have a wound on them, you can put 2 wounds on each guy, and so on and so forth. So I've got 2 normal stormtroopers, and I've got the sergeant. I want the sergeant to attack because he has a power weapon. So here's on 1 normal guy, the other normal guy, sergeant, and 2 on 1 normal stormtrooper. So let's roll the 2 for the stormtrooper. He fails 1 of his saves, so he dies. The other stormtrooper, he makes his save, so he's alive. And the sergeant fails his save, so he dies, unfortunately. Now, when you do an assault and you remove casualties, set them aside. Don't just throw them in the pile with the rest of the stuff, because you got to keep track of them. Now, I've got a stormtrooper there. He has in his profile 2 close combat weapons. His weapon skill is 3. Against the weapon skill of 4, so I need a 4+ with his 2 attacks. He fails them both, of course. So the stormtroopers failed miserably. And these assault marines, as you can see, won the combat by 2 wounds. They did 2 wounds more to me than I did to them. At this point, you do what's called a leadership test. So, since my sergeant's dead, my leadership's only 7. And I get a -2 to my roll. So I basically need to roll 5 or lower with 2 dice. I rolled an 8, so I failed my leadership. At this point, you roll off with initiative. So you take the Space Marines initiative of 4, and they roll a die and add it to it. So Space Marines roll a 4, so their total is 8. I roll a die and add it to my initiative of 3. So I roll a total of 5. Since they tied or got a higher number than me, they basically wipe out the entire squad. So since they rolled a total of 8 and I rolled a total of 5, any remaining models in my squad are just removed. They're just overrun as they try to run away. So that was a pretty effective assault from the Assault Marines. They killed everything they could. And now since they won combat, there's nothing left. They do what's called a consolidation. They can move up to D6 inches, so 6 inches. So they can choose where to go, anywhere up to 6 inches from where they are now. Okay, so the Assault Marines move back. They move back 6 inches to try to get away from these Sentinels. And this is the end of the first game turn. So now it goes on to turn 2. Now that we've gone over most of the rules, I'm kind of gonna just breeze through them. I'm gonna just declare what I'm shooting at, what I'm moving, and just go ahead with the rules quickly instead of explaining every part. If you got any questions, just go ahead and leave a comment and I'll respond to it. But I'm just gonna go through this game pretty quickly now that I've gone through most of the rules that you have to know. Okay, now that we've gone through a complete turn, kind of step by step, I'm going to start breezing through these ones a little bit, just so you kind of get a handle on how gameplay usually goes, kind of the speed of rolling and rolling different attacks together. As you can see, I put it on turn 2 now. Turn 2 is when you would typically start rolling for reserves, if you had any. On turn 2, a reserve would come in on a roll of 4+. So, for example, if I had a unit in reserves, I would say, let's say I just had another Chimera with veterans in it. So I'd take a die. I'd declare which squad I'm rolling for, a 1, so they didn't come in this turn. If they came in, they either come off your board edge, which is where most units have to come in. If they have the scout or infiltrate rule, they can attempt to make an outflank move, which would come off of one of these two short ends over here, which I'll go into in a separate video. Or they could deep strike, which I will also go into in a separate video. Deep striking, basically, they can go anywhere on the table and they scatter. They deviate from where you want them to go. Moving right on ahead to turn 2 here. This is the Imperial Guard turn 2. And as you can see again, Space Marines have taken 1 casualty, and the the Razorbacks immobilized, and the Imperial Guard have lost their entire Stormtrooper squad. So right now the kill points are 0 for the Imperial Guard, and the Space Marines have 1 kill point. So these Sentinels are going to start off by attempting to move through the difficult terrain, and they move 6 inches. Which will put them basically right up next to these guys. Okay, over here, this tank's only going to move 6 inches because it wants to fire as many weapons as possible. Okay. Alright, so that's it for the moving phase. On to the shooting phase. Remember, this Sentinel here lost its weapon to some shots from heavy bolters. So I've got 1 autocannon here, and it's going to fire into the Assault Marines. I have Ballistic Skill 3, so I need a 4, so both of those shots fail. Over here, I'm going to first fire the guys in the inside of the vehicle. The hatch here counts as a firing point, so I measure from the firing point itself. Now I've got 2 melta-guns, if you remember correctly. I've got 2 melta-guns in there, which have range, 12 inches. And I have a flamer, and I have las guns. Now I can fire 5 weapons from the top of the Chimera. So I'm going to choose to fire. Remember, declare which things you're firing before you measure each one. So I've got my melta-guns that are firing, both of those. I'm firing my flamer, and I'm firing 2 las guns. So here's a flamer from the hatch, and you can't really see through it, but I've got 2 guys under there. And then I'll have 2 las guns. So let's go ahead with the melta-guns first. And these are veterans, so they have Ballistic Skill 4, so I need a 3. So I made 1. And then it's Strength 8, Armor Piercing 1, so I only need a 2+ to wound them. And of course I rolled the 1. This is the 2 shots from the Flamer. A Flamer is Strength 4, Space Marines are Toughness 4, so you need a 4+. They make both of their wounds. And then I've got 2 las guns. Now las guns are range 24 inches, but they're rapid fire. And since the vehicle moved, the guys count as moving. When the guys move, they can't fire at 24, but they can still fire 2 shots each at 12 inches. Just like with the hot shot las guns. So they each have 2 shots, so that's 4 shots. Actually made 3 of those. Now las guns are kind of the crap of the crap weapons in the 40k universe. They're only Strength 3 against a Toughness of 5, and they have no armor piercing value. Or Toughness of 4, rather. So I need a 5+ here. And I actually made 2. This is always fun when people take lots of wounds from las guns. Okay, now Space Marines, like I said before, have a 3+ armor save. They're very heavily armored, so they get their saves now. They failed 1. So I'll go ahead and take off 1 Space Marine back here. Alright, so Space Marines have 5 in their squad now. And I'm going to go ahead and shoot the multi-laser at them too. The Chimera only has Ballistic Skill 3, so it needs a 4+, so I made 1. And a 2+ to wound, because it's Strength 6, and that wounds. And they get their save, and they made their save. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead into the assault phase. Nothing took enough casualties to require a leadership test, so we're going to go ahead and assault. The Sentinels have to roll for their to see how far they can move through this difficult terrain. And they can move 4 inches, which will get them plenty into base to base, since they're about an inch or two away. So they're now in base to base contact. And these guys here, well, they've got to try to get into base to base contact, which they now are. Okay, so now you go by initiative. I charged through cover, so even if my initiative was higher, these Space Marines would go first. But their initiative's higher anyway. It's 4 against my 3. So we're going to go ahead with the assault.